Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. TJ here once again. Tonight's topic is kind of a continuation on a topic I brought up previously about poor financial management and a lack of accountability when you're dealing with such narcissistic / other cluster B personality disordered people. I just have been thinking about it a little bit more, and it stems back from my experience. As you probably know, many years ago I worked for a major credit card collection company. At least over 20 years ago. I was just a kid, like 20, did not have any credit cards, and after working here was pretty terrified of even ever owning a credit card, because even though I worked with what represented, they said, 5% of all card holders, every call I got was 100% collection. So in my brain, when I talked on the telephone, it's like every customer of this bank was delinquent. It gave me a skewed viewpoint of people who have that card. Well, the point of all this is, as I touched on in another video, is I was given basically a crash course in cluster B traits when dealing with these types of calls, because here I was placed in a little desk with a headset and a computer and a phone, and people who had gotten calls from us would call in saying, "I got this call, what's this about?" And I'd be the one to pull up the file and say, "Oh, well, you have a past due amount." And then we'd try to work it out, resolve it, whatever the case may be. But again, I did not have cards, so I didn't really know what it was like to have one, but I learned how people react to the fact that they borrowed money and weren't necessarily willing to resolve it. So it kind of taught me, without knowing, what to expect down the road in the world ahead as I got older, dealing with people in like a personal level. They kind of behave in the same manners as the people I spoke with. So the example we'll use here will be, which we can see clearly on the screen when they call in and we pull it up, basically a person who applies for a credit card and they get the credit card, and it's, let's say, a $2,000 credit limit. Well, what we would see on the screen is that the card was open in this particular month. The first month it was charged up to $2,000, and the next month and the month after and the month after, no payments ever came in. So that makes me think of like a child who gets a credit card that says $2,000 credit limit, and they think, "Ooh, I've got $2,000 free dollars," and they go out and charge, and then throw the bill away when it comes, because it's like a matter of instant gratification. You got this money, spend it, and never look back. Well, that's what I would get these calls from after, let's say, 2, 3, and 4 months pass with no payments. Well, rather than a person calling in to say, "Yes, I've fallen behind, I'd like to work something out," I would get calls from people who would do like the cluster Bs do. Ignore the fact that they borrowed this money and didn't pay it back. It would be something more along the lines of this. And I'd answer, "Thanks for calling whoever. Can I get your number?" And they'd say, "I want to talk to your manager now. You people talk to someone who is not listed on my card. I'm going to sue you people." And I'd be like, "Okay, let me get the card number," and I get it, pull it up, and after so many of these types of calls, I started to be able to almost, with ESP, know exactly what was going to happen, because what would end up happening would be I'd pull the account up, I'd see never paid, but charged up in the first month, and I'd say, okay, the account has fallen behind, and like the cluster Bs I learned are met later, they wouldn't even focus on that. They would be like, "I want your manager. You talked to someone who's not listed on this card about my account." And I'd look in the notes and see spoke to spouse, So I'd say, oh, you mean your spouse? And they'd say, yes, she is not listed on this card, and you told her what I was owing and whatever. And I'd think, well, wait a second, because people don't know this, but in different states, if it's a spouse, legally we can talk to them. But these people think, well, if I leave my spouse off the card, she'll never get to hear about it. They're wrong. So I'd look at the state they're in and think, wait a second, sir, you're in the state of blah, 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 and in that state we can talk to a spouse. And by the way, there has not been a payment for the last 4 months. Well, guess what? They would not even focus on that. Just like when you confront your narcissist or other cluster B for behavior that's completely wrong, that even they would agree was wrong if it was done to them, and they're like not even focusing on that. And they would be like, you had no right to tell her this. And I was like, sorry, but in your state we can reveal information about your debt to a spouse. I used to have to say things like, we can't be expected to keep secrets from your spouse regarding a card that you opened. But what this illustrates is a spouse, it could be a male or a female, has opened a card behind the other's back, thinking that if they don't add their name to the card, then they'll never hear about it, and that's not true. But again, once again, we try to resolve the matter at hand, and the conversation is thrown left and thrown right and does not ever address the whole point of making the payment. They're just mad that we dared to tell, just like when you catch your narcissistic partner cheating because you followed them. They don't care that you caught them cheating. They care that you dared to follow them. Imagine that, which is retarded and repulsive. But the other part of this would be another person who did the same thing, took the card out, never paid it. 6 months went by, and then they find the person of their dreams and decide to buy a house. Well, they go to the bank, and the bank pulls up this card, which is 6 months delinquent. So what do? Lack of accountability. They call us and say, how dare you people ruin my credit? I can't buy this house because of you people. It's like, what? And again, I didn't have cards then, but I thought, you never paid the bill. And you're saying it's we people's fault for you not getting a house? Come on now. But again, it was just crazy for me as a young kid to hear this stuff. But it illustrates how these people will take the card, charge it, throw it away, throw the bill away, and then blame the bank for preventing them from being able to get a new loan or whatever the case was. And I just found it wild because so many of them would use the very same phrases. Like when calling in, I got to the point where, again, I had ESP, like, I know what this is about. You're upset because we talked to your spouse about the card you opened behind her back. And the other part of this would be, I'd get like a call from some lady crying in tears, and it's like, what's going on? And she'd say, well, you people told my husband that I had opened this card, and I left his name off of it, and because of that he beat me, and he's going to divorce me. And again, I think, okay, again, in your state, we cannot keep a secret from a spouse. But it was just a very interesting experience and prepared me for what was up to come later. And I now know that human nature is universal no matter what situations it's involved. No matter what situation it's involved in, whether it's credit card bills or truths to their partner or whatever the case is. It's just weird.